The iron gates of the Shadowmere fortress groaned shut behind Alara, their finality echoing through the morning mist like a death knell. She stood motionless on the frost-laden path, her thin cloak offering no protection against the bitter wind that swept down from the northern mountains. In her hands, she clutched a single leather satchel containing everything she owned, which amounted to 3 dresses, a worn prayer book, and the shattered remnants of her dignity. 6 months as Luna. 6 months of trying to be enough for a king who looked at her with increasingly cold eyes. 6 months of enduring the whispers of the pack elders, the pitying glances of the servants, the mounting pressure to produce an heir she could not give. The rejection ceremony had been brief, clinical. King Damon Nightshade had stood before the assembled court, his silver eyes devoid of emotion, and spoken the words that severed their mate bond. "You are barren. The Nightshade line requires heirs. I release you from this bond." No apology, no recognition of the 6 months she had stood beside him, learning to navigate the brutal politics of the Lycan realm. No acknowledgement that she had loved him with every breath, even knowing he had never loved her in return. Alara forced herself to walk. One foot, then the other. Away from Shadowmere, away from the only home she had known since her village burned 5 years ago, leaving her orphaned and alone. The pack had taken her in as a servant, and somehow, inexplicably, the mate bond had snapped into place the moment King Damon returned from the Northern Wars. She had been nobody. A girl with no surname, no lineage, no power. And for 6 months she had been Luna of the most powerful Lycan kingdom in the realm. Now she was nobody again. The forest path wound downward through ancient pines, their branches heavy with snow. Alara had no destination, no plan. The king had granted her safe passage through his lands, but beyond the borders of Shadowmere territory, she would be vulnerable. A rejected Luna, cast out and unprotected. Her hand moved unconsciously to her lower abdomen, a habitual gesture she had developed over months of desperate hoping. The pack healer had examined her countless times, administered herbs and tinctures, performed rituals beneath the full moon. Nothing had worked. The diagnosis remained unchanged. She was sterile, incapable of bearing children, unworthy of being Luna. The thought sent a fresh wave of pain through her chest, more acute than the cold. She had failed. Failed her king, failed her pack, failed the bond itself. By midday, Alara reached the boundary stones that marked the edge of Shadowmere territory. Beyond them lay the disputed lands between kingdoms' lawless territories, where rogues and exiles gathered. She paused, studying the weathered markers. Once she crossed this threshold, she would have no protection, no status. She stepped across. The forest seemed darker here, the trees more gnarled and hostile. Alara pulled her cloak tighter and continued walking. She had heard of a settlement 3 days south, a place where outcasts found refuge. If she could reach it, perhaps she could find work, rebuild some semblance of a life. That night, she made camp in a small cave, too exhausted and heartsick to go further. She had no fire. The risk of attracting attention was too great. Instead, she huddled in her cloak, shivering, and tried not to think about the warm chambers she had left behind, the massive bed she had shared with a king who touched her dutifully but never passionately, the libraries where she had spent lonely afternoons reading while he attended to matters of state. Sleep came in fitful waves, broken by nightmares of silver eyes turning away from her, of a bond severing with an audible snap. She woke before dawn to the sound of voices. Tracks lead this way. Fresh, maybe a day old. Alone, you think? Alara's blood turned to ice, rose. She pressed herself against the back of the cave, hardly daring to breathe. Through the entrance, she could see torchlight flickering between the trees. Check the caves along this ridge. Footsteps approached. Alara's heart hammered so violently she was certain they would hear it. She had no weapons, no means of defense. If they found her... The footsteps stopped just outside her cave. A figure appeared in the entrance, silhouetted against the pre-dawn light. Male, broad-shouldered, with the distinctive, predatory grace of a Lycan. He inhaled deeply, scenting the air. "Well," he said, his voice rough with dark amusement, "what do we have here?" Alara scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The cave was shallow, offering no escape. The rogue stepped inside and 2 others joined him, their eyes gleaming with hunger. "Please," Alara whispered, hating the tremor in her voice. "I have nothing of value." The lead rogue laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. You smell like pack, like territory." He inhaled again and his eyes widened with recognition. "Gods below. You smell like Shadowmere, like the Nightshade King himself." Terror flooded through her. Being connected to demon, even by scent alone, made her valuable and dangerous. "I was cast out," she said quickly. "Rejected. I'm nobody. Nobody who carries the scent of the most powerful alpha in the realm." The rogue grinned, showing elongated canines. "Oh, you're valuable, little Luna. Very valuable indeed." They bound her wrists with rough hemp rope that bit into her skin, dragging her from the cave as dawn broke over the mountains. Alara stumbled over roots and stones, her captors showing no mercy as they hauled her deeper into the lawless territories. The lead rogue who identified himself as Corvin seemed particularly pleased with his prize. "The Raven Court will pay handsomely for Nightshade's rejected mate," he told his companions, his voice carrying back to where Alara struggled to keep pace. "King Aldrich has been looking for leverage against Shadowmere for years." The Raven Court. Alara's stomach dropped. Everyone knew of Aldrich Ravencroft, the brutal Lycan King who ruled the Eastern Territories with calculated cruelty. If these rogues delivered her to him, she would become a political pawn in the deadly game between rival kingdoms. Or worse, she would simply disappear. They traveled through the morning without rest, following game trails that wound through increasingly dense forest. Alara's legs burned with exhaustion, her throat parched. When she stumbled, they jerked the rope hard enough to nearly dislocate her shoulders. "Keep moving," Corvin snarled. "You slow us down, I'll drag you the rest of the way." By afternoon, they reached a clearing where other rogues had made camp. Temporary shelters constructed from branches and stolen canvas dotted the space, and a fire pit smoldered in the center. Alara counted at least a dozen Lycans, all of them bearing the distinctive marks of outcasts' scarred faces, mismatched clothing, weapons of varying quality. They threw her against a tree and secured her there with additional rope. Alara's wrists were raw and bleeding, her entire body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The rogues gathered around the fire, passing a wineskin and arguing about how to proceed. "We should contact the Raven Court now," one argued. "Get our gold and be done with it." "Too risky," another countered. "Nightshade will be looking for her. His pride won't allow a rejected mate to simply disappear." Corvin's laugh was bitter. "You think he cares? He cast her out because she's barren. She's worthless to him." The words struck like physical blows. Alara closed her eyes, willing herself not to cry. They were right. Damon had made his position clear. She was worthless, disposable, forgettable. Night fell, and the temperature plummeted. The rogues kept the fire burning, but made no move to offer Alara warmth or food. She sat bound to the tree, shivering violently, watching stars emerge in the crystalline sky above. This was how she would die, she realized with strange detachment. Cold, alone, unmourned. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only numbness. Around midnight, one of the rogues standing watch suddenly stiffened. "Something's out there." The camp came alert instantly, weapons drawn. Alara lifted her head, trying to see through the darkness beyond the fire's light. For a long moment nothing moved. Then she felt a presence in the forest, ancient and powerful, pressing against her awareness like a physical weight. The trees themselves seemed to hold their breath. "Chill yourself," Corvin demanded, his voice betraying the first hint of fear Alara had heard from him. A figure emerged from the shadows between the trees, moving with liquid grace that made the rogue's movements seem clumsy by comparison. He was tall, dressed in dark traveling clothes, with a hood that obscured his face, but even before he stepped into the firelight, Alara knew. The bond, though severed, still whispered recognition. Damon. The Lycan King pushed back his hood, revealing features that had haunted Alara's dreams since the moment she first saw him. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, silver eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. His dark hair was longer than she remembered, touching his shoulders, and something about his expression was different. Harder. More dangerous. "Release her," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority despite its quiet tone. Corvin recovered first, raising his sword. "The rejected Luna belongs to us now, Nightshade. You cast her out. You have no claim. I am giving you one chance," Demon said, still not raising his voice. "Release her, leave these lands, and you may live." The rogues laughed, emboldened by their numbers. 12 against 1, even if that one was a king. Damon's expression didn't change. So be it. What happened next would later blur in Alara's memory, a chaos of violence too swift and brutal to fully comprehend. Damon moved like death itself, his transformation partial, controlled in a way that spoke of centuries of mastery. Claws extended, strength multiplied, but maintaining enough humanity to wield strategy alongside savagery. The first 3 rogues died before they could even shift. Damon's claws tore through flesh and bone with surgical precision, his movements economical, efficient. The others managed their transformations, becoming the massive wolves that were their true forms, but it made no difference. A king was a king for a reason. Alara watched, frozen, as Damon cut through the rogues like they were nothing. He was faster, stronger, more skilled. Every movement demonstrated why he ruled Shadowmere, why other packs bowed before him. This wasn't just power, it was dominance, absolute. Corvin, to his credit, lasted longest. He managed to land one strike, his claws raking across Damon's shoulder. The king barely flinched. He caught Corvin by the throat, lifting him off his feet with one hand. "She is mine," Demon said, his voice resonating with alpha command that made even Alara's severed bond shiver in recognition. "Mine to protect, mine to cast out, mine to reclaim. No one touches what belongs to the Nightshade King." He threw Corvin against a tree with enough force to break bone. The rogue didn't rise. Silence fell over the clearing, broken only by Demon's controlled breathing. Bodies lay scattered around the camp, the snow stained dark with blood. The Lycan King stood in the center of it all, utterly still, his silver eyes fixed on Alara. Then he crossed to her, each step measured. Alara couldn't move, couldn't speak. Up close, she could see blood splattered across his face, his hands still tipped with claws. He looked like the monster the other kingdoms whispered about, the beast of Shadowmere, the cursed king, but his hands were gentle as he cut through the ropes binding her. "You're hurt," he said, examining her raw wrists with something that looked almost like fury. Not directed at her, at those who had harmed her. "Why did you come?" Alara managed, her voice hoarse. "You rejected me. You said, 'I know what I said.'" Demon's jaw clenched. "I was wrong." The words hung in the frozen air between them. Impossible. Incomprehensible. Kings didn't admit to being wrong. Alphas didn't return for rejected mates. Yet here he stood. Damon wrapped his own cloak around Alara's shoulders, the garment still warm from his body and carrying his scent pine, snow, and something uniquely him that made her severed bond ache with phantom sensation. She couldn't stop trembling, though whether from cold, fear, or his proximity, she couldn't say. "Can you walk?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost gentle. It was a tone she had never heard from him during their 6 months together. Alara nodded, not trusting her voice. Her legs wobbled when she tried to stand, and Damon steadied her with a hand on her elbow. The touch sent electricity through her skin, making her gasp. He pulled back as if burned. "Forgive me," he said stiffly. "I should not presume. You just killed 12 Lycans for me," Alara interrupted, finding her voice at last. "I think you can touch my arm." Something flickered in those silver eyes. Pain, perhaps. Regret. "I have no right. I severed the bond. I cast you out." "Then why are you here?" The question came out sharper than she intended, months of hurt bleeding through. "Why did you come after me?" Demon was silent for a long moment, his gaze sweeping the carnage around them before returning to her face. "Because the moment you crossed the boundary stones, I felt it. The emptiness where you should have been. And I realized what I had done." "Realized what? That you made a mistake in casting out your barren Luna?" Bitterness crept into Alara's voice despite her efforts to suppress it. Realize that I am the monster everyone claims, but not for the reasons they think. Demon's voice dropped even lower. Walk with me. We cannot stay here. He turned and moved toward the edge of the clearing, clearly expecting her to follow. Alara hesitated, then forced her exhausted body into motion. They entered the forest, leaving the blood-soaked camp behind. Demon maintained a careful distance, never touching her again. Though he adjusted his pace to match her limping steps, they walked in silence for perhaps half an hour before Demon spoke again. You were 19 when the bond formed. I was 347. Do you understand the weight of that difference? Alara blinked, surprised by this direction. I knew you were ancient. All true kings are. Ancient, he repeated, the word bitter. Yes, I have lived through the rise and fall of kingdoms, watched friends turn to dust, buried more pack members than you have years of life. And when the bond snapped into place with a servant girl barely more than a child. He stopped walking, his back rigid. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was a mistake, that fate had erred. You deserved better than a king who has forgotten how to be anything but cold. So you married me anyway, Alara said slowly, piecing together understanding. Took me as Luna because the bond demanded it, and then spent 6 months at war with myself. Demon resumed walking, his voice tight with self-loathing. Every night I felt you beside me, felt your gentle presence, your earnest attempts to be what you thought I needed. And every night, I told myself I was protecting you by maintaining distance, that if I never allowed myself to care, you would be safe from the curse that has destroyed everyone I have ever loved. The words struck Alara like physical blows. What curse? The Nightshade line is blessed with power and cursed with loss. Demon's laugh was hollow. Every king, for 7 generations, has watched their true mate die young. My father watched my mother waste away from an illness no healer could cure. His father before him saw his mate killed by rival packs. The pattern repeats, unchanging. Power in exchange for love. Alara's breath caught. You think I would die if you loved me. I have seen it happen too many times to doubt. They emerged into a small clearing where a stream cut through the snow. Damon finally turned to face her, and the raw pain in his expression made her heart clench. So I kept you at distance, fulfilled the bond's requirements without allowing attachment, and when the elders pressed for an heir, when months passed with no pregnancy, I saw my opportunity. To cast me out. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. To protect me. To save you from the fate that has claimed every Nightshade Luna for 7 generations. Demon's hands clenched into fists, but I underestimated the bond. Underestimated you. The moment you left Shadowmere, I felt it, the wrongness of your absence, the danger surrounding you. And I realized that pushing you away had not broken the curse. It had simply made us both suffer for nothing. Alara stared at him, trying to process this revelation. 6 months of coldness, of feeling inadequate and unwanted, had been his attempt at protection. Misguided, painful protection, but protection nonetheless. You should have told me, she said quietly. And said what? I cannot love you because you will die? Demon's voice turned harsh. You would have tried to prove me wrong, to fight fate itself. I know you, Alara. You have always been braver than you realize. The use of her name, casual and familiar, sent warmth through her chest. During their marriage, he had called her Luna, never by name. This felt more intimate than any touch. So what now? She asked. You saved me from rogues and then what? Return me to Shadowmere? Keep me at distance for my own protection? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. I only know that when I felt you in danger, nothing else mattered. Not the curse, not the kingdom, not my carefully constructed walls. I would have torn through every pack in the realm to reach you. But the rejection stands, Alara said, forcing herself to face reality. The bond is severed. The formal bond, yes. Demon moved closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. But mate bonds, true ones, are not so easily destroyed. You must feel it to her, the echo, the shadow of what was. She did. God's help her, she did. It whispered beneath her skin, drawing her toward him despite everything. I am still barren, she said, the word cutting like glass in her throat. I still cannot give you heirs. I have ruled for 3 centuries without heirs. I can rule 3 more. Demon's voice softened. The pack needs many things, Alara. An heir is only one. What they need more is a king who remembers why he fights, what he protects. You showed me that, and the 6 months you stood beside me. I was merely too afraid to acknowledge it. Tears burned behind Alara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You hurt me, I know. The simple acknowledgement, without excuse or deflection, somehow meant more than any apology could. I know. And I will spend whatever time you grant me trying to prove I am capable of being more than the monster I have become. They made camp beside the stream as night deepened, Damon building a fire with practiced efficiency while Alara sat wrapped in his cloak watching him work. Her mind spun with revelations, trying to reconcile the cold king she had known with this man who spoke of curses and protection, who had killed for her without hesitation. Eat, Demon said, offering her dried meat and bread from his pack. You're exhausted. Alara accepted the food, suddenly aware of her gnawing hunger. She had not eaten since yesterday morning. As she ate, she studied Demon in the firelight. He had cleaned the blood from his face and hands, but his shirt was still torn where Corvin's claws had struck. The wound had already healed, leaving only faint marks that would fade by morning. Does it hurt? She asked. The curse. Knowing that everyone you love is doomed. Demon was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. It hollows you, he said finally. Makes you afraid to feel anything at all. After my mother died, I watched my father transform from a warrior king into a ghost. He lasted 3 years before grief took him. I swore I would never allow myself to be destroyed that way. So you built walls. Mountains. His lips twisted in a bitter smile. I told myself I was being strong, pragmatic, that a king cannot afford emotional entanglements. I took mates when the pack demanded it, maintained careful distance, and when they died, as they always did, I mourned appropriately and moved on. How many? The question slipped out before Alara could stop it. 3, before you. All political arrangements, all short-lived. Demon's voice was carefully neutral. The longest lasted 7 years. The shortest, 14 months. Each time, the curse found its way. Illness, accident, assassination. The method varied. The result did not. Alara's chest ached for him, for the accumulated grief he carried, and yet you allowed the bond with me to stand. I had no choice. True mate bonds. He shook his head. They are different from political arrangements. Stronger. More binding. I could reject you formally, sever the bond legally, but I could not stop feeling it. Could not stop being drawn to you. You hid it well. The words came out more bitter than she intended. Too well. Demon finally met her eyes across the fire. I convinced myself that coldness was kindness, that if I never allowed you close, you would be spared. But all I did was make you feel unwanted while failing to protect you regardless. The moment you crossed into unprotected territory, you were in danger. My rejection changed nothing except to remove you from the safety of Shadowmere. The admission hung heavy between them. Alara drew the cloak tighter, breathing in Damon's scent. What happens when we return, assuming we return? That depends on you. Demon's gaze was steady, unflinching. I cast you out publicly. To take you back would be to admit error before the pack, before the elders, before every kingdom watching for signs of Shadowmere weakness. It would invite challenges, political maneuvering, possibly open conflict. So it would be easier to leave me cast out. Easier, yes, but I did not hunt through rope territory and kill 12 Lycans for ease. His voice held an edge now, alpha command bleeding through. If you return with me, you return as Luna, fully, completely, with all the authority and protection that title carries. No halfway measures, no more coldness. The pack will accept it or face my wrath. The declaration should have thrilled her. Instead, Alara felt only exhaustion and a deep, aching weariness. And the curse will claim you eventually, I imagine. The brutal honesty was somehow comforting in its lack of false hope. But I am done running from fate. If I am cursed to lose what I love, then I choose to love anyway, for however long we are granted. The alternative, this hollow existence, is no better than death. Alara studied his face, seeing vulnerability there she had never witnessed before. The mighty Lycan King reduced to desperate honesty by his own fear of loss. You're asking me to risk my life simply by being loved by you. Yes. No deflection, no pretty lies. Just that single word, weighted with terrible truth. And if I say no? If I choose to remain cast out, to build a life somewhere far from curses and kings? Pain flashed across Demon's features, quickly suppressed. Then I will ensure you reach safety, provide gold enough to start anew, and return to Shadowmere alone. He paused. But I will not lie and claim I would forget you. The bond, severed or not, has marked us both. You will always be the one I pushed away out of misguided protection, the one I failed. The raw honesty in his voice undid something in Alara's chest. This was not the cold king she had known. This was a man stripped bare by his own fear and regret, offering her a choice he clearly hoped she would make, but refusing to manipulate or pressure. I don't know what I want, she admitted quietly. That's fair. Demon rose, moving around the fire to his own bedroll. Rest. We have days of travel ahead to reach Shadowmere. There will be time to decide. But as Alara lay down, still wrapped in his cloak, she wondered if any amount of time would make this decision clear. Love a king and risk the curse, or walk away from the only bond that had ever made her feel truly seen, truly wanted. Neither option offered safety. Both demanded courage. She wasn't certain she possessed. The fire crackled between them as sleep finally claimed her, and her dreams were filled with silver eyes and whispered confessions in the dark. Morning arrived with frost-laden mist and the distant call of ravens. Alara woke to find Damon already awake, seated cross-legged beside the dying fire, his eyes fixed on the tree line with the alertness of a predator. He had changed his torn shirt for a fresh one from his pack, his dark hair tied back in a manner she had never seen during their marriage. There's a town half a day's walk from here, he said without preamble when he noticed she had woken. We can resupply, rest properly, before continuing to Shadowmere, if you wish to continue. The caveat hung in the air between them. Alara sat up slowly, her body aching from yesterday's ordeal. You would let me stay in the town, disappear while you returned alone. I would hate it, Demon said with characteristic bluntness, but yes, I have taken enough choices from you. I will not take this one. They traveled in silence through the morning, following game trails that wound through increasingly civilized forest. Damon maintained his careful distance, never touching her, though his gaze swept their surroundings constantly, alert for danger. Protective, Alara realized. Not possessive, protective. There was a distinction she had never considered before. Tell me about the curse, she said as they walked. How it began. Demon's jaw tightened, but he answered. 7 generations ago, my ancestor Malachar Nightshade made a bargain with a moon witch, power in exchange for a price. He thought himself clever, negotiating for his line to hold the strongest pack in the realm, for his descendants to rule unchallenged. The witch agreed. With one condition, every true love would be fleeting. You will know the depth of the bond, she told him, but never its longevity. And he agreed? He was young, arrogant, and hungry for power. He agreed. Demon's voice was heavy with ancient bitterness. By the time he understood what he had done, it was too late. His mate died within a year of their bonding. His son's mate lived perhaps longer but succumbed to fever. Every generation since has known the same fate. Has anyone tried to break it? Every generation has tried. Healers, witches, even other moon-blessed. None have succeeded. They crested a rise, and through the trees ahead, Alara could see smoke from the town's hearths. The most we have managed is understanding the pattern. The stronger the love, the shorter the time. Mates kept at distance live longer, though their lives are hollow. True, deep bonds. He stopped walking. Rarely last more than a few years. The implication settled over Alara like weighted cloth. If she returned with him, if they allowed the bond to deepen as it wanted, she would have perhaps a handful of years before the curse claimed her. "Is that why you never showed affection?" she asked quietly. "Why you kept our marriage so formal?" "I told myself if I never truly loved you, the curse would pass you by, that you might live a full life even if it was lonely." Demon's laugh was bitter. "Foolish. The bond forms regardless of what we want. I was simply torturing us both while pretending it was protection." They descended toward the town, a modest settlement built around a central square. Humans and Lycans mixed freely here in the neutral territories between kingdoms. Demon pulled his hood up, concealing his distinctive features. A recognized Lycan King would draw attention neither of them needed. They found an inn called the Broken Crown, its sign depicting a tarnished circlet. Inside, warmth and the smell of cooking meat welcomed them. The innkeeper, a weathered human woman, barely glanced at them before assigning a room and demanding payment in advance. "1 room," Demon told her, placing silver coins on the counter. Then, to Alara, "unless you prefer separate quarters." "1 is fine," Alara heard herself say. After 6 months of sharing chambers, the intimacy seemed less daunting than the statement separate rooms would make. The room was small but clean, with a single large bed and a fireplace. Damon immediately moved to build a fire while Alara sank onto the bed's edge, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She watched him work, this powerful king reduced to tending a hearth, and something in her chest twisted. "Why did you really come after me?" she asked. "The truth. Not the curse, not the bond. Why?" Demon finished with the fire before turning to face her. He remained standing, as if sitting would make him too vulnerable. "Because in 6 months, you never once demanded anything from me, never complained about my coldness, never used your position for personal gain, never played the political games every other Luna in my memory has employed." His voice softened. "You simply tried. Every day you tried to be what you thought I needed, even when I gave you nothing in return. And the moment I cast you out, the moment you walked away from Shadowmere, I realized I had pushed away the only genuine thing in my life." "I wasn't that good," Alara said, uncomfortable with the praise. "I was just trying not to be a burden. And that is precisely what made you different." Demon moved closer, stopping just in front of her. "You saw yourself as a burden when you were anything but. You apologized for failing to provide heirs when the failing was my inability to show you that you mattered beyond your womb. You tried to be invisible when your presence was the only thing that made the fortress feel like more than a tomb." Tears burned in Alara's eyes. "You never said, 'I know.'" "I was a coward." He knelt before her, bringing their eyes level. "I am ancient and powerful and feared across every territory in the realm. And I was too afraid of feeling to tell you the truth, that having you near made the endless years seem bearable. That your quiet strength reminded me why I became king in the first place, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That you, rejected servant girl with no lineage, had more courage in your smallest finger than I had accumulated in 3 centuries." A tear escaped, tracking down Alara's cheek. Damon reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed it away with his thumb. The touch sent lightning through her nerves, the phantom bond singing recognition. "I am still afraid," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of loving you and watching the curse take you. Afraid of failing you again. But I am more afraid of the emptiness I felt when you were gone. So I am asking, begging, if necessary, for the chance to prove I can be more than the cold king you married, that I can be worthy of the faith you showed in me, even when I gave you no reason for it." Alara's hands trembled as she reached up, cupping his face. His eyes fluttered closed at her touch, and she felt a shudder run through his powerful frame. "If I do this," she said slowly, If I return with you and allow the bond to reform, I need truth. No more walls, no more protection through distance. Whatever time the curse grants us, I want it to be real. Real, Damon repeated, opening his eyes. The silver depths held something fierce and vulnerable at once. No more walls, no more coldness, just us, however imperfect, however dangerous. However brief, Ilara added, acknowledging the terrible reality. However brief. He turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. But gods, Ilara, I will make every moment count. I swear it. She believed him. Perhaps foolishly, perhaps recklessly, but she believed the raw honesty in his voice. This was the man beneath the crown, beneath the ice, and she wanted to know him. Even if the curse was inevitable, even if their time was numbered in years rather than decades. Then we returned to Shadowmere, she said, together. The relief that washed over Demon's face was almost painful to witness. He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully, as if afraid she might shatter. Ilara pressed her face against his shoulder, breathing him in, letting herself feel the bond's echo singing between them. Outside, night had fallen, and somewhere distant, wolves howled their songs to the moon. But here, in this small room in a neutral town, two souls found their way back to each other, curse and all. They stayed in the town for 2 days, allowing Ilara to recover her strength. Damon remained vigilant, never leaving her side, though he maintained a respectful physical distance that Ilara found both endearing and frustrating. The walls he had promised to tear down would take time to fully dismantle, she realized. 3 centuries of learned isolation did not vanish in a single conversation. On the evening of their 2nd day, as they shared a simple meal in their room, a raven arrived. It perched on their windowsill, tapping insistently against the glass with its beak. Damon went rigid, his alpha instincts flaring. Ravens meant messages, and messages in rogue territory rarely brought good news. He opened the window. The bird hopped inside, dropping a small scroll tied with black ribbon before departing as swiftly as it had arrived. Demon studied the scroll without touching it, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Ilara asked, rising from the table. "The Raven Court seal." He finally picked up the scroll, breaking the wax seal with careful precision. As he read, his jaw clenched and fury rolled off him in palpable waves. "Demon?" He passed her the letter without a word. Ilara's blood chilled as she read. "King Nightshade, word has reached the Raven Court that you retrieved your rejected mate from rogue custody. How fortunate that she was recovered before more permanent arrangements could be made. However, her presence in unprotected territory raises questions of sovereignty and safety. The Eastern Territories would be pleased to offer refuge, should your former Luna prefer more stable protection. Additionally, there is the matter of the 12 rogues found dead in disputed lands. While we acknowledge your right to defend what you claim is yours, such violence in neutral territory invites scrutiny. We propose a meeting, 3 days hence at the border between our kingdoms. Let us discuss these matters civilly, king to king. Your ally in uncertain times, King Aldrich Ravencroft." "It's a trap," Ilara said immediately. Obviously. Demon's voice was cold, controlled rage barely leashed. "Aldrich has wanted an excuse to challenge Shadowmere's dominance for decades. Your presence gives him leverage proof that I am either weak enough to be defied or reckless enough to start wars over a rejected mate. So we don't go. If we don't go, he declares me coward and uses it to undermine Shadowmere's alliances. If we do go, he has the opportunity to strike at me with you present as a vulnerability." Demon crumpled the letter in his fist. Either way, he maneuvers us into weakness. Alara's mind raced, weighing possibilities. What if I went to him? Publicly accepted his offer of refuge? It would remove you from the equation, deny him the leverage. Absolutely not. The words came out as pure alpha command, making her wolf instincts shiver despite the severed bond. You would be a prisoner, used to manipulate me regardless. Aldrich's protection is no protection at all. Then what? We hide? Run? Frustration bled into her voice. Damon was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant, calculating. No. We go to the meeting. But not as he expects. Explain. Aldrich thinks I am conflicted, vulnerable, that your presence weakens me because I care for you while fighting against it. A cold smile curved Demon's lips, predatory and sharp. We give him a different narrative. You return to Shadowmere not as a rejected mate I rescued out of sentiment, but as Luna reclaimed because I chose wrong. Because the pack requires it. Because politically your presence serves me better than your absence. Understanding crashed over Alara. You want to make it seem calculated, like your emotions aren't involved at all. It's what he expects from me, the cold king who makes every choice based on power and strategy. Demon's voice held bitter self-awareness. Let him think I am unchanged. Let him believe I am simply correcting a political error. It removes the emotional leverage and makes you appear valuable to Shadowmere's interests rather than a sentimental weakness. And privately? Alara asked quietly. Privately, I will show you every day that you are more than politics. His voice softened. But publicly, at least until we have neutralized Aldrich's threat, we maintain the facade of calculated reunion. Can you do that? Can you stand beside me as Luna while I pretend you mean less than you do? The irony was not lost on Alara. After 6 months of emotional distance, he was now asking her to help her form distance while feeling more than ever before. If it keeps us both safe, yes. It will not be permanent, Demon promised. Once Aldrich is managed, once the threat passes, I will make it clear that you are Luna, not because politics demand it, but because I choose it. Choose you. I know. And strangely, she did. The man kneeling before her now bore little resemblance to the cold king she had married. That king would never have admitted vulnerability, never have asked rather than commanded. They spent the remainder of the evening planning, mapping out responses to potential challenges Aldrich might raise. By the time they finally retired, Alara's head ached with political strategy and counter-strategy. She lay in the darkness, listening to Demon's breathing from his position on the floor. He had insisted on giving her the bed, maintaining propriety even in their temporary quarters. It would have been sweet if it wasn't also slightly maddening. Demon, she whispered into the darkness. Yes? The bed is large enough for both of us, and sleeping on cold floors is no one's idea of comfort. Silence stretched. Then, are you certain? I am. When he didn't immediately move, she added, we were married for 6 months. We have shared a bed before. That was different. His voice was rough. Then I kept distance as protection. Now I am trying to earn your trust. I don't want you to feel pressured. Damon, get in the bed. She heard him rise, felt the mattress dip as he settled on the far edge, maintaining space between them. Alara smiled in the darkness. He was trying so hard to be respectful, to give her control, that he had swung to the opposite extreme. I'm not made of glass, she said, rolling toward him. I won't shatter if you come closer. But I might, he murmured, so quietly she almost missed it. Understanding flooded through her. After 3 centuries of maintaining walls, of keeping everyone at arm's length, allowing true intimacy terrified him. Not because he didn't want it, but because he had forgotten how. Alara reached out in the darkness, finding his hand. Their fingers intertwined, and she felt him shudder at even this simple contact. Then we figure it out together, she whispered. Walls come down brick by brick, not all at once. His thumb traced circles on her palm, tentative, wondering. You are far braver than I deserve. Then work to deserve me. She felt rather than saw his smile. They lay there in the darkness, hands clasped, not sleeping but not needing to. This quiet connection, this rebuilding of trust, brick by careful brick, was its own kind of intimacy. Tomorrow they would face Aldrich. Tomorrow they would perform coldness and calculation. But tonight, in this small room far from kingdoms and curses, they were simply 2 people learning to be vulnerable again. It was enough. For now, it was enough. 3 days later, they reached the border between Shadowmere and the Raven Court territories. The meeting place was a clearing marked by ancient standing stones, neutral ground where treaties had been signed and broken for centuries. Alara could feel the weight of history in the air, the ghosts of past negotiations hovering like mist. Demon had transformed during their journey. The vulnerable man from the inn had been replaced by the Lycan King controlled every inch the dominant alpha. Alara understood it was necessary, but it still sent an ache through her chest to see him retreat behind those walls again. "Remember," he told her as they approached the clearing, his voice pitched low. "You are here because it serves Shadowmere's interests, not because I want you. The moment Aldrich believes otherwise, he will use it against us." "I understand." Alara straightened her borrowed cloak, trying to look more confident than she felt. They had stopped at Shadowmere briefly to allow her to bathe and dress appropriately for this meeting. The fortress had felt both familiar and foreign, servants staring at her with undisguised shock at her return. Aldrich Ravencroft waited in the clearing with an honor guard of 6 Lycans, all dressed in the black and crimson of the Raven Court. He was tall, dark-haired, with sharp features that might have been handsome if not for the calculating cruelty in his eyes. When he saw them approach, his smile was all teeth. "Nightshade," he called, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. "How good of you to accept my invitation. And you brought your lost lamb. How sentimental." Demon's expression remained impassive. "You requested a meeting to discuss matters of territory and sovereignty. I am here to discuss them. Nothing more." Of course, of course." Aldrich's gaze slid to Alara, assessing. "Though I confess surprise at seeing your rejected mate return to your side. The rumors suggested you had cast her out quite definitively." "I corrected an error in judgment," Demon said, his tone bored, as if discussing nothing more interesting than the weather. "The Luna position requires filling. She serves that purpose adequately." The words were designed to sound callous, strategic. Alara had prepared herself for them. Still, they stung, even knowing they were performance. Aldrich's eyes gleamed. "Indeed? And here I thought perhaps affection had motivated your violent retrieval from rogue custody. 12 dead is quite a statement." 12 rogues who abducted someone bearing Shadowmere's scent," Demon countered smoothly. "An insult to my territory that demanded response. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal," Aldrich repeated, clearly not believing it. "Then you wouldn't object to my court extending hospitality to your Luna? Purely diplomatic, you understand. Building bridges between kingdoms." Alara felt Demon tense beside her, though his expression remained unchanged. This was the trap forced Damon to either relinquish her, proving she held no real importance, or refuse and reveal that his cold demeanor was facade. Before Demon could respond, Alara stepped forward. "King Ravencroft is most kind," she said, keeping her voice neutral, diplomatic. "However, I have duties at Shadowmere that require my attention. The pack has been without a Luna for some time, and there are matters of estate management that need addressing." Aldrich's smile widened. "Duties? How admirably practical. Tell me, Lady Alara, does being adequate not grow tiresome? Serving a king who views you as nothing more than a placeholder?" "Every Luna serves her kingdom," Alara replied, refusing to be baited. "My personal feelings are irrelevant to that service." "But you have personal feelings." Aldrich moved closer, his predatory grace reminiscent of Demon's own. "Don't you, little lamb? You loved him, didn't you? During those 6 months when he kept you at arm's length, never once showing you tenderness, you loved him anyway." The words were designed to crack her composure, to reveal vulnerability Aldrich could exploit. Alara met his gaze steadily. "What I felt then or feel now is my concern alone, King Ravencroft. Not yours." "How very diplomatic." Aldrich circled them slowly, his honor guard maintaining position. "King Nightshade, I must confess, I am intrigued by this reunion. The timing is curious just after your rejected Luna found herself in danger, almost as if you cared about her well-being." "I care about anything that bears Shadowmere's mark," Demon said coldly. "Including rejected Lunas who foolishly wander into rogue territory. Their debts reflect poorly on my rule." "Ah yes, your rule." Aldrich stopped circling, facing them directly. "Which brings us to the true purpose of this meeting. Shadowmere has held dominance in the region for too long, Nightshade. Your power is based on fear, on the legend of the cursed king who destroys all who oppose him. But legends are only as strong as the belief in them. Is that a challenge?" Demon's voice dropped an octave, alpha power rippling through the words. Merely an observation. Aldrich's smile never wavered. You cast out your Luna publicly, admitting her inadequacy before the entire pack. Now you retrieve her with equal publicity, claiming it was political error. It makes you appear indecisive. Weak. Surely you see how other kingdoms might interpret this? Ilara understood the game now. Aldrich wasn't trying to take her or fight Demon directly. He was trying to undermine Shadowmere's reputation, to make other packs question Damon's stability and judgment. A king who changed his mind about HisLuna might change his mind about anything. Alliances, treaties, territorial agreements, all suddenly negotiable if the king was seen as erratic. My decisions regarding pack leadership are mine alone to make and unmake, Demon said, his voice deadly quiet. Those who question them are welcome to challenge me directly. Are you issuing such a challenge, Ravencroft? The clearing went silent. An official challenge would mean single combat, king against king, with territory and dominance as the prize. It was the oldest law, the most sacred, but also the most dangerous defeat meant death or submission. Aldrich held Demon's gaze for a long moment before laughing. Not today, old friend. Merely testing the waters, seeing if the rumors of your sentimentality had any merit. He gestured to his guards. We are done here, but Nightshade, do consider my earlier offer. Should your Luna ever find Shadowmere inadequate for her needs, the Raven Court would welcome her, with or without your blessing. It was a calculated insult, suggesting Ilara might choose to leave, might prefer Aldrich's protection to Demon's cold pragmatism. Damon's jaw clenched, fury bleeding through his controlled facade. She goes nowhere, he said, the words vibrating with barely leashed dominance. Not to your court, not to neutral territory, not anywhere beyond Shadowmere's walls. Is that clear? Aldrich's smile turned triumphant. There it was, the crack in the armor, the hint of possessiveness that suggested Damon cared more than he admitted. Crystal clear, King Nightshade, until our paths cross again. He departed with his guard, leaving Damon and Ilara alone in the clearing. The moment they were out of sight, Damon's control shattered. He spun away, hands clenched into fists, breathing hard. I played directly into his manipulation, he ground out, showed exactly the weakness he wanted to see. You showed you won't allow me to be claimed by another king, Ilara corrected, moving to stand beside him. That's not weakness, that's strength. It's vulnerability he will exploit. Demon turned to face her, and the fear in his silver eyes made her heart ache. He knows now, knows that I care, that you matter beyond politics. He will use it, Ilara. Will threaten you to manipulate me. Let him try. Ilara reached up, cupping his face despite the risk of observers. You spent 6 months trying to protect me through distance. It didn't work. Maybe it's time to try a different approach. What approach? Standing together. No more walls, no more performance. Let them see that yes, I matter to you, and let them see that I am strong enough to stand beside you regardless. She smiled slightly. Besides, you think Aldrich doesn't already know? He goaded you precisely because he suspected the truth. Pretending otherwise won't convince him. Demon leaned into her touch, some of the tension draining from his frame. When did you become so wise? 6 months of watching court politics from the shadows. Ilara let her hand drop, stepping back. No, come on. Let's go home. Home. Shadowmere. The fortress that had felt like a prison during her marriage now felt like sanctuary. Perhaps because this time she wasn't returning as an inadequate Luna, desperately trying to be enough. She was returning as herself flawed, uncertain, but choosing to be there. And this time, she wouldn't be alone behind those ancient walls. This time, the king beside her was learning to let her in. They arrived at Shadowmere as night fell, the fortress rising from the mountainside like a dark crown against the stars. Torches lined the walls, and guards straightened at the sight of their king returning. Word of Ilara's return had preceded them, and she could feel the weight of curious gazes as they passed through the gates. The pack had gathered in the main hall, clearly summoned to witness this homecoming. Elders stood in their traditional positions of honor. Warriors lined the walls, and servants clustered near the doorways, all eyes fixed on Alara as she walked beside Damon, no longer relegated to trailing behind as she had during their marriage. "The Luna has returned," Damon announced, his voice carrying through the hall with alpha authority. "The rejection was made in error and is hereby revoked. She stands as my mate and your Luna, with full authority and protection of the Nightshade crown." Murmurs rippled through the assembled pack. Elder Thorn, a grizzled Lycan who had served Damon's father, stepped forward. "You cast her out for failing to provide heirs, my king. Has this changed?" "The Luna's ability or inability to bear children is irrelevant," Damon said flatly. "I rule Shadowmere, not any potential heir. She's Luna because I choose her, and the pack will respect that choice or face consequences." The bluntness was so characteristic of him that several pack members visibly relaxed. This was the king they knew, decisive, uncompromising, brooking no dissent. What they didn't understand was what had changed beneath that familiar coldness. Damon turned to Alara, and she saw the question in his eyes. This next part they had discussed during the journey home, but it was her choice whether to proceed. She nodded slightly. "The Luna and I will complete the full bonding ritual," Damon announced. "Tonight." Witnessed by pack elders as tradition demands. Shocked silence met this declaration. The full bonding ritual, the marking ceremony, was rarely performed anymore, considered archaic by many packs. But it was also the most ancient, most sacred way to establish a mate bond, permanent, visible, undeniable. "My king," Elder Thorn said carefully, "the marking ritual cannot be undone. Once completed, the Luna is yours for life, regardless of circumstance." "I am aware of the ritual's permanence," Damon said coldly. "That is precisely why I am invoking it. There will be no more questions about the Luna's position. No more doubts about her place in this pack. She is mine. I am hers. And that bond will be sealed in blood and witnessed by all." Alara felt her pulse quicken. They had agreed to this, but standing before the assembled pack, the weight of it struck her fully. The marking ritual would restore their bond stronger than before. Impossible to sever. It would also hurt. The king's claiming mark was given through a bite that left a permanent scar, visible proof of belonging. "Prepare the ritual chamber," Damon commanded. "We begin within the hour." The pack dispersed to make preparations, murmuring among themselves. Alara followed Damon through the fortress to their chambers, the rooms she had left weeks ago, expecting never to return. Everything was as she remembered, down to the book she had left open on the bedside table. "Are you afraid?" Damon asked once they were alone. "Of the pain, a little." Alara removed her cloak, folding it carefully. "Of the permanence? Not at all. The bond will be stronger than before," he warned. "You will feel my emotions. I will feel yours. There will be no hiding, no walls. Every fear, every doubt, every moment of vulnerability, we will share it all." "Good." Alara turned to face him. "You've had 3 centuries of practice hiding. This will force you to stop." A ghost of a smile crossed his features. "You find my discomfort amusing? I find your growth necessary." She moved closer, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. "Besides, the vulnerability goes both ways. You will feel every moment I doubt myself, every flash of inadequacy I feel when I remember I am a servant girl standing as Luna. Then I will spend every day proving to you that you are far more than your origins." Damon caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "You are my mate, Alara, not because politics demand it, not because the pack requires it, because I choose you. Consequences and curses be damned." A knock at the door interrupted them. "The ritual chamber is prepared, my king." Damon's eyes never left Alara's face. "Ready?" She nodded, though her heart hammered with nervous anticipation. They descended through the fortress to the oldest level, carved directly from the mountain itself. The ritual chamber was a circular room, lit by torches and marked with ancient symbols. The 3 pack elders waited, along with the healer who would tend wounds and verify the bonding's completion. "Luna Alara," Elder Thorn intoned formally, Do you accept this marking of your own free will, understanding it cannot be undone? I accept, Alara said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. King Demon, do you claim this woman as your true mate, bound in blood and witnessed by the pack? I claim her. Demon's voice resonated through the chamber, vibrating with alpha power. She is mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to defend against all who would harm her. Then let the ritual begin. Alara knelt as tradition demanded, baring her throat in the ultimate gesture of trust. Damon circled her slowly, and she could feel the shift in him, the alpha rising to the surface, dominant and possessive. His hand cupped the back of her neck, surprisingly gentle. "This will hurt," he murmured, "for her ears alone, but I will make it as quick as possible. I trust you." She felt him shudder at the words, then his teeth were at her throat, pressing down, breaking skin. Pain lanced through her, sharp and consuming, but beneath it ran something else. The bond reforming, snapping into place with force that took her breath away. Power flooded through the connection, ancient and overwhelming. She felt Demon's presence in her mind, no longer a whisper but a roar. His fear, his fierce protectiveness, his determination to be worthy, and beneath it all, so carefully guarded yet undeniable, his love. Raw and powerful and terrifying in its intensity, the bond locked into place with an almost audible click. Demon pulled back, blood on his lips, his eyes blazing with possession and something deeper. "Mine," he growled, the word vibrating through the bond between them. "Yours," Alara whispered, touching the mark at her throat. It burned, but the pain was already fading as her Lycan healing accelerated the process. "And you are mine." She saw surprise flicker across his face, quickly followed by something that looked like wonder. The bond worked both ways. He could feel her now as clearly as she felt him, including her fierce protective instinct, her determination to stand beside him, her willingness to face the curse if it meant having him truly present rather than hiding behind walls. "The marking is complete," Elder Thorn announced. "Luna Alara is bound to King Damon, now and for the remainder of their days. Let no one question this union." The other elders echoed his pronouncement. The healer moved forward to check the mark, nodding satisfaction at its placement and depth. "The wound will scar within hours. The bond is permanent." Demon helped Alara to her feet, his hands steadying her as the room spun slightly. The bond was so much stronger than she remembered, so immediate and consuming. She could feel his heartbeat as if it were her own. They ascended to their chambers together, neither speaking until the door closed behind them. Then Damon pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I feel you," he said against her hair, "your strength, your courage, all the things I was too blind to see before." "And I feel you," Alara replied, running her hands up his back. "All the fear you hide, all the love you were too afraid to show." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "The curse will take me eventually." "I know." Alara reached up, touching his face. "But Damon, I would rather have 5 years truly loved than 50 years kept at distance. Whatever time we have, let's not waste it in fear." 5 years, he repeated, his voice breaking slightly. "That's all the longest bonding has lasted. My grandmother lived 3 years after marking. My mother barely made 2. Then we make every day count." Alara felt the bond thrumming between them, alive and vital. Every moment matters. That's what makes them precious. Damon kissed her then, deeply, desperately, and through the bond she felt the full force of his emotion, the love he had denied for so long, the fear of losing her, the desperate determination to make their abbreviated time together mean something. It was overwhelming and perfect and terrifying all at once. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling. "I don't know how to do this," Demon admitted. "How to be with someone without walls. It's been so long." "We figure it out together," Alara said, echoing her words from the inn. "One day at a time, one moment at a time. Together." He tested the word, and through the bond, she felt his wonder at the concept. "I have been alone for so long, I forgot what together meant." "Well, you're not alone anymore." Alara took his hand, lacing their fingers together. You're stuck with me now. Permanently, literally magically bound. His laugh was startled and genuine, the first time she had heard him truly laugh in all the months she had known him. Stuck with you. I can think of worse fates, even knowing the curse, especially knowing the curse. His smile faded, expression growing serious. If my time with you is limited, then I refuse to waste a single moment of it. Starting now. The weeks following the marking ceremony passed in a strange new rhythm. Alara had expected to simply return to her previous role as Luna, navigating court politics and managing estate affairs. Instead, she found herself learning an entirely different dance, the dance of being truly partnered with a king who was relearning how to be vulnerable. Demon kept his promise about dismantling walls. He sought her counsel on pack matters, not because protocol demanded it, but because he genuinely valued her perspective. They took meals together, walked the fortress grounds in the evenings, and spent nights talking until dawn about everything from kingdom politics to the book she had read during her lonely months as his wife. Through the bond, she felt his constant vigilance, his hyper-awareness of her health and safety. The curse loomed over them both like a shadow, never mentioned but always present. Damon tracked every symptom, every minor ailment, waiting for the curse to manifest. "You're doing it again," Alara said one evening as they sat in their chambers before the fire. She had sneezed twice, and through the bond she felt his spike of fear. "Doing what?" But he couldn't quite hide the worry in his eyes. "Preparing for me to die." Alara set down her book, turning to face him fully. "Damon, I'm mortal. I was mortal before the marking. I will catch colds, suffer headaches, have days when I feel unwell. Not every symptom is the curse, but it could be." His voice was tight. "My mother's illness started with a simple cough. Within 3 months, she was gone. And if I live in fear of every cough, every sneeze, we might as well not be living at all." Alara moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "The curse is real. I know that. But so is this moment right now. Don't let fear of my death steal the joy of my life." Through the bond, she felt his struggle. The instinct to protect warring with the knowledge that she was right. "I don't know how to not be afraid," he admitted quietly. "Then be afraid. Feel it, acknowledge it, but don't let it control you." Alara squeezed his hand. "I'm here now. Love me now. Whatever tomorrow brings, we'll face it together." "Together," he repeated, the words still seeming to bring him comfort. "I am trying, Alara, but 3 centuries of loss, I know." She leaned into his shoulder. "But you have to trust that I know what I signed up for, that I chose this with my eyes open." They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the bond humming between them. It was these quiet moments Alara treasured most, when Damon allowed himself to simply be present, not planning or protecting, just existing beside her. The peace was shattered a week later when Alara collapsed during a pack assembly. She remembered feeling dizzy, the room spinning, and then darkness. When she woke, she was in their chambers, surrounded by healers, with Damon gripping her hand so tightly she could feel his panic through the bond. "What happened?" she managed. "You fainted," the head healer said. "A small woman named Mira, who had served the pack for decades. Your pulse was erratic, your breathing shallow. We need to examine you properly." "No." Demon's voice was raw. "No examinations, not yet." Mira frowned. "My king, if the Luna is ill." "I said not yet." He looked like he was barely holding himself together, his worst fears manifesting before his eyes. "Give us a moment, please." The healers withdrew reluctantly. The moment they were alone, Damon pulled Alara into his arms and she felt him shaking. "It's starting," he whispered against her hair. "The curse. I felt it through the bond, something wrong. Something dark, taking root." "You don't know that." But even as Alara said it, she felt the tremor of fear in her own chest. It could be anything. Exhaustion, stress. Or it could be what claimed every other Luna in my line. Demon pulled back, his silver eyes haunted. "I can't lose you, Alara. Not now." Not when I finally learned to love without walls. Then fight. Alara cupped his face, forcing him to meet her gaze. If this is the curse, we fight it. Together. You said every generation has tried to break it. Maybe we find what they missed. Every generation has failed. Every generation didn't have us. Alara felt fierce determination rising in her chest. I refuse to accept that fate is fixed. There has to be a way. Through the bond, she felt his desire to believe her warring with centuries of disappointment. Finally, he nodded. We try. We fight. But Alara, if it comes to choosing between your life and breaking the curse, we'll cross that bridge if we reach it. She wouldn't let him finish that sentence, wouldn't let him imagine a scenario where he sacrificed himself to save her. For now, let's focus on understanding what we're facing. The healers returned at Damon's summons, this time accompanied by Elder Thorn and the pack's oldest witch, a woman named Morgana who rarely left her tower in the North Wing. She examined Alara with gnarled hands and keen eyes that seemed to see far more than the physical. Interesting, Morgana murmured after a long moment. What is? Demon demanded. What do you see? Not the curse. Morgana's ancient face creased in what might have been a smile. Or at least, not the curse as you understand it. Hope flared in Alara's chest. Then what? Your mate bond is stronger than any I have witnessed in my long life, child. It burns like a beacon, connecting you both at the deepest level. Morgana turned her gaze to Damon, and within that bond, I sensed something unexpected. Speak plainly, witch, Damon growled. The Luna is not dying, my king. She's changing. Morgana's smile widened. Tell me, when did you last have her examined for fertility? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Alara felt her heart stop. I'm barren. Multiple healers confirmed it. Multiple healers examined a human girl whose Lycan nature was still developing. Morgana gestured to Mira. Examine her properly. I believe you'll find the diagnosis has changed. What followed was the longest hour of Alara's life. The healers performed their tests and rituals while Damon paced the room like a caged wolf, his emotions through the bond a chaotic mix of hope and terror. Finally, Mira looked up from her examination, her expression stunned. My king, the witch is correct. The Luna is with child, approximately 6 weeks along based on the development. Silence. Damon stood frozen, his face drained of color. Through the bond, Alara felt his thoughts racing. 6 weeks ago was just before he rejected her. This child had been conceived during those final weeks of their cold marriage, when he had been most desperate to maintain distance. That's impossible, he finally said. She was tested. Repeatedly, every healer confirmed she could not conceive. The bond changes things, my king, Morgana said gently. A true mate bond, especially one as powerful as yours, can overcome many obstacles, including infertility. She turned to Alara. How do you feel, child? Overwhelmed, Alara admitted. Her hand moved instinctively to her abdomen, still flat, showing no sign of the life growing within. And confused. If I was already pregnant, why did the rejection not harm the child? Because the child is Nightshade, Morgana said simply. Born of a true mate bond and carrying your king's bloodline. Such children are resilient, protected by the very magic that curses their line. Demon finally moved, crossing to Alara's side. Through the bond, she felt his mind working through implications, fears, possibilities. A child, he said softly. An heir, not just an heir. Morgana's voice held an edge of excitement that belied her ancient years. A child conceived in a true mate bond and carried by a Luna marked in the old way. Such children are rare, precious. They carry power differently than those born of political arrangements. The curse, Demon started. Cannot touch the unborn, Morgana interrupted. The child is safe until birth. After, she shrugged. That remains to be seen. Alara felt Damon's hand find hers, gripping tight. Through the bond, his emotions were a maelstrom: joy at the unexpected child, terror of losing her to the curse, desperate hope that perhaps this changed something. "What do we do?" he asked, and the vulnerability in his voice made Alara's chest ache. "We prepare," Alderthorn said firmly. "If the Luna carries the heir to Shadowmere, the pack will protect her with everything we have. The curse has claimed Lunas before, but never one carrying the next generation. Perhaps that matters. Perhaps," Morjane agreed, "or perhaps this child is the key to breaking what has bound your line for 7 generations. Children of true bonds born to marked Lunas. Such things have not occurred in your family for longer than I have lived." Hope, fragile and tentative, began to bloom in Alara's chest. She placed her hand over Damon's where it rested on her still flat stomach. "Maybe this is why the bond formed," she said quietly. "Maybe fate isn't as cruel as we thought. Maybe it was giving us exactly what we needed to break the curse. Or maybe it's giving us one more thing to lose," Damon countered. But through the bond she felt him wanting to believe, desperate to hope after centuries of disappointment. "Then we fight for it," Alara said firmly. "We fight for this child, for our future, for the chance to finally end the curse that has haunted your family for too long." Demon pulled her close, careful of her newly precious condition, and through the bond she felt his resolve crystallizing. "We fight," he agreed, "together." Word of the Luna's pregnancy spread through Shadowmere like wildfire, and within days, through the broader Lycan territories. An heir to the Nightshade line, conceived in a true mate bond. It was news that shifted the political landscape. Allies sent congratulations. Rivals sent thinly veiled threats disguised as well wishes, and Aldrich Ravencroft sent a raven. Demon read the message in their chambers while Alara rested, her body adjusting to the demands of pregnancy. Through the bond she felt his surge of rage before he could even speak. "What does it say?" she asked, pushing herself to sitting. "Aldrich offers his protection during your vulnerable condition." Demon's voice dripped venom. "Suggests you might be safer in Ravencourt territory where the curse cannot reach you. He all but accuses me of putting you and the child at risk by keeping you at Shadowmere." Alara's hand moved to her stomach protectively. "He's trying to use the child as leverage." "Of course he is." Demon crumpled the message. "He knows the pregnancy changes everything. An heir gives Shadowmere stability, ensures the line continues even if..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Even if the curse claims me," Alara completed quietly. Through the bond, she felt his flinch. "We can't pretend it's not a possibility, Damon, but we also can't let fear of it control our choices. Aldrich will exploit any perceived weakness." Demon began pacing, his tactical mind clearly racing through scenarios. "If he believes you're vulnerable, he will find a way to strike. He needs to understand that your condition has not weakened Shadowmere, it has strengthened our position. Then, we show him that." Alara swung her legs over the side of the bed, ignoring Demon's immediate move to stop her. "I am not an invalid. I am a pregnant Luna, yes, but I am also still your mate and this pack's leader. We don't hide me away like some fragile prize." "Ilara, no." She stood, facing him with determination she felt through the bond. "The curse has already claimed too much of our joy. I refuse to let it, or Aldrich's manipulation, claim more. We fight this together, remember? That includes showing the realm that Shadowmere's Luna is strong, even carrying the heir." Through the bond, she felt his pride in her courage warring with his protective instincts. Finally, he nodded. "Then we make a statement, a public one that cannot be misinterpreted." They called a gathering of the Pack's allied territories, inviting representatives from every major Lycan kingdom, including, notably, the Raven Court. The message was clear. Shadowmere had nothing to hide, nothing to fear. The Luna was pregnant, yes, but strong and protected. The gathering took place in Shadowmere's Great Hall, transformed for the occasion into a space of power and prestige. Alara dressed carefully, choosing garments that emphasized her status as Luna, while not concealing her condition. She wore the nightshade crown, a circlet of dark silver and moonstones, and the formal robes that marked her as Damon's true mate. Representatives filled the hall, their curiosity palpable. Alara could feel Damon's constant awareness of her through the bond as they took their positions on the dais. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a public display of unity. "We thank you all for attending," Damon's voice carried through the hall with alpha authority. "We have called this gathering to address rumors and clarify Shadowmere's position during this significant time for our pack." He paused, his silver gaze sweeping the assembled crowd. "Luna Alara carries the heir to Shadowmere. This child represents the continuation of the Nightshade line, and was conceived in a true mate bond, marked in the old way. Such a birth has not occurred in our family for 7 generations." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. 7 generations, everyone understood the significance. That's how long the curse had held sway. "There are those," Damon continued, his voice hardening, "who have suggested that the Luna would be safer elsewhere, that Shadowmere's history makes this fortress an unsuitable place for the future of our line." Aldrich's representative, a cold-eyed woman named Celine, spoke up. "King Nightshade, surely you cannot deny that every Luna of your line has met an untimely end. It is only natural that allies would express concern for your mate's well-being and that of your unborn child." Concern. Damon's smile was sharp as a blade. "How thoughtful. And yet, I notice these concerns come primarily from kingdoms that have historically opposed Shadowmere's dominance. Curious timing, wouldn't you say?" Celine's expression remained neutral. "King Ravencroft merely wishes to offer aid to a fellow monarch during a difficult time." "My mate is not in difficulty," Damon said flatly. "She is strong, healthy, and surrounded by the most powerful pack in the realm. Your king's aid is neither needed nor welcome." "But the curse," Celine started, "will be faced on our terms, in our territory." Damon's voice resonated with finality. "Luna Alara and our unborn child are under Shadowmere's protection. Any threat to them, from any source, will be met with the full force of the Nightshade crown. Am I understood?" The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. Alara felt his alpha power filling the hall, pressing against every Lycan present, demanding submission. One by one, they bowed their heads in acknowledgement, all except Celine, who held his gaze a moment longer before finally inclining her head. "Crystal clear, King Nightshade," she said softly. The gathering continued with the traditional formalities, pledges of alliance renewed, gifts presented to the Luna, diplomatic pleasantries exchanged. Through it all, Alara maintained her composure, aware of every eye tracking her movements, looking for signs of weakness or fear. She found none to show them. That evening, after the last representative had departed, Damon finally allowed himself to show his exhaustion. He dismissed the servants and pulled Alara into his arms, careful of her stomach, breathing in her scent like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "I was terrified," Alara admitted, "but I meant what I said. I refuse to let fear control us." "The curse is still real, Alara. Pregnancy does not make you immune." "No." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "But maybe, just maybe, it changes the equation. Morgiana said this child is different, conceived in a true bond, carried by a marked Luna. Maybe that matters. And if it doesn't?" The fear in his voice made her heart clench. "If the curse takes you anyway, and I am left with a child who will grow up knowing I couldn't save their mother?" Alara cupped his face, forcing him to hold her gaze. "Then you raise them to be strong, to understand that love is worth the risk, and to know their mother chose this path willingly. You don't let them grow up thinking love equals loss, Damon. You teach them that love is worth fighting for, even when fate seems determined to steal it." Through the bond, she felt his anguish, his desperate desire to protect her while knowing he might be powerless against destiny. But beneath that, she also felt his determination crystallizing into resolve. "We find a way to break this," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I don't care what it takes, what price must be paid. We break the curse before it can claim you." "We try," Alara agreed. "But Damon, if we can't, we will." He pulled her close again. "Because the alternative is unacceptable. I am done losing what I love. Done accepting that fate is immutable. This curse was made by a witch. Which means it can be unmade. Ilara felt hope kindle in her chest, fragile but real. Maybe he was right. Maybe 7 generations of failure simply meant they hadn't found the right solution yet. Maybe their child was the key, or maybe fate had one more lesson to teach them about the price of power. Only time would tell. Winter settled over Shadowmere with unusual harshness, snow piling against the fortress walls and ice coating the ancient stones. Ilara's pregnancy progressed into her 2nd trimester, her body changing in ways both wondrous and challenging. Through the bond, Demon felt every discomfort, every moment of nausea or fatigue, his protective instincts amplifying to almost unbearable levels. "You need to let me walk to the library alone," Ilara said one morning, exasperation bleeding through the bond. "I am pregnant, not helpless." "You nearly slipped on ice yesterday," Demon countered, trailing her through the corridor. The healer said, "I am perfectly healthy and should maintain normal activity." Ilara stopped, turning to face him. "Damon, I love you, but if you don't give me some space, I will start using the bond to broadcast every single uncomfortable pregnancy symptom directly into your consciousness." Through the bond, she felt his surprise at the threat, followed by reluctant amusement. "You wouldn't. Try me." But she was smiling now. "I understand you're afraid. I feel it through the bond constantly. But you cannot protect me from everything, and trying to will drive us both mad." He pulled her close carefully, always so carefully now. "I am trying to give you space while also ensuring you don't hurt yourself or the child. It is a difficult balance. Then trust me to ask for help when I need it." Ilara kissed his jaw, "And trust that our child is resilient. They are Nightshade, after all." That evening, as they sat before the fire in their chambers, Morgana arrived unexpectedly. The ancient witch moved with surprising grace for her age, her eyes bright with urgency. "I have been researching," she announced without preamble. "The curse, its origins, its constraints, and I have found something." Demon was on his feet instantly. "What?" "The witch who laid the curse Seraphine of the Blackwood Coven." She was not acting alone. Morgana settled into a chair, accepting the tea Ilara poured for her. "The curse required blood magic of significant power, more than one witch could easily wield." "Who helped her?" Ilara asked. "That is unclear. But I found records of a counter-curse attempted by Malakar's son after his mate died. He sought out Seraphine to beg for its reversal. She refused, but she did tell him something interesting." Morgana's gaze grew distant. She said the curse would end when a Nightshade King valued something more than power, when he proved willing to sacrifice his dominance for love. Demon's laugh was bitter. "Every king in my line has loved their mates. Love was never the issue." "No," Morgana agreed, "but power was. Each king maintained their position, held their dominance, even as they watched their mates waste away. They mourned, yes, grieved deeply, but they never stepped down, never relinquished the crown that came with the curse." Understanding crashed over Ilara like ice water. "You think the curse can be broken if Damon gives up being king?" "I think the curse was designed to force exactly that choice." Morgana leaned forward. "Power or love? Dominance or devotion? Seraphine made Malakar choose, and every generation since has chosen to keep the crown and lose the mate." Silence filled the chamber. Through the bond, Ilara felt Demon's mind racing, weighing implications. "If I step down," he said slowly, "what happens to Shadowmere? To the pack? We have no heir yet, and the child will not be of age for decades." "Elder councils can rule until the heir comes of age," Morgana said. "It has been done before in other packs. It would leave Shadowmere vulnerable." Demon was pacing now, his tactical mind mapping consequences. "Aldrich would see it as weakness, would move to absorb our territory. Other kingdoms would challenge our borders. Without a strong king, the pack would fracture." "Perhaps," Morgana acknowledged, "or perhaps a pack that sees their king choose love over power would become even stronger. Loyalty inspired by devotion rather than dominance." Ilara watched Damon struggle with the revelation, felt through the bond his warring instincts. the deep-seated need to protect his pack warring with his desperate desire to save her. She understood what Morgana was asking. Would he choose differently than his ancestors? Would he value her life over his crown? "How certain are you that this would work?" Demon asked finally. "I am not certain at all," Morgana admitted with frustrating honesty. "This is theory based on cryptic statements from a long-dead witch. It could break the curse, it could do nothing, or it could have consequences we cannot predict. So I might sacrifice everything for nothing. Or sacrifice nothing and lose everything," Morgana countered gently. "The curse is real, King Demon. The Luna is in her second trimester now. If the pattern holds, you have at most 3 years before it claims her. Possibly less. 3 years." The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Through the bond, Alara felt Damon's anguish, his rage at fate for forcing this impossible choice. "Don't," she said quietly. He turned to her, confusion flickering across his features. "Don't make this decision now, based on fear." Alara stood, moving to stand before him. "We have time. Not much, perhaps, but enough to research further, to see if there are other options. Don't give up your crown out of desperation without exploring every alternative. But if waiting means losing you, then we face that together, knowing we tried everything." Alara took his hands. "I don't want you to sacrifice Shadowmere for me and then spend the rest of our lives wondering if it was necessary. If there's even a chance of another solution, we owe it to ourselves and our child to pursue it." Through the bond, she felt his gratitude for the reprieve, but also his certainty that if it came down to a choice, he would choose her, would always choose her. Consequences be damned. Morgana watched them with ancient eyes, something that might have been approval flickering across her weathered features. "There is one other thing," she said. "The child. A true heir, conceived and carried under circumstances the curse has not encountered before. Their birth might matter." "How?" Alara asked. "I don't know. But curses are not simple magic. They have conditions, loopholes, unexpected consequences. A child who embodies both the curse and the love that defies it." Morgana shook her head. There is power in that paradox. Power that might be harnessed. "You're suggesting we wait until the birth," Demon said. "See if the child's arrival changes the equation. I'm suggesting we gather all the information we can before making irreversible choices." Morgana rose, preparing to leave. "But I will continue researching, and I will be honest, time is not on our side." After she left, Demon and Alara sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Through the bond, Alara felt his mind turning over possibilities, weighing options, preparing for battles they might not be able to win. "I would give up the crown," he said finally, "without hesitation if I knew it would save you." "I know." Alara threaded her fingers through his. "But let's not make that sacrifice until we're certain it's necessary. You've spent 3 centuries building Shadowmere into what it is. That matters too. Nothing matters more than you." The simple declaration made her chest ache. This from a man who had spent their first 6 months together maintaining careful distance, pretending she was nothing more than a political necessity. Now he would sacrifice his kingdom for her without hesitation. "Then help me prepare," Alara said. "If the curse does come for me, I want to know our child will be protected, that Shadowmere will be strong enough to keep them safe." "The child will have everything," Demon promised. "Power, protection, and the knowledge that their mother was brave enough to face a curse rather than hide from it. And their father was wise enough to choose love over power, even when the choice terrified him." Alara leaned into his shoulder. "That's the legacy we leave them, Damon. Not fear, not loss, but the courage to love, despite the cost." Through the bond, she felt his agreement, his determination to make whatever time they had count. 3 years, if Morgana was right, 3 years to love deeply, to prepare their child for the world, to perhaps, if they were very lucky, find a way to break a curse that had held for 7 generations. It wasn't enough time, but it would have to be. Spring arrived with the Luna's 3rd trimester, and with it, complications. Alara woke one morning to cramping and blood, terror flooding through the bond before she could even call for help. Damon burst through the door apparently. He had been standing guard outside their chambers. Despite her insistence, sleep in the healers were summoned immediately. "The child is fine," Mira assured them after a tense examination. "But the Luna's body is under strain. This pregnancy, it is taking a toll." "What kind of toll?" Demon demanded, his hand gripping Alara's so tightly she could feel his bones grinding together. "Her life force is being drained," Morgana said, arriving with the healers. "The child grows strong, fed by its mother's vitality. This is not uncommon in Lycan pregnancies, but combined with the curse." She trailed off meaningfully. Alara felt cold understanding settle over her. The pregnancy is accelerating the curse. "Or revealing what was always coming," Morgana said gently. "The curse thrives on love, on the deep bonds that should strengthen. A child, the ultimate expression of that bond, may simply be speeding up what was inevitable." "Then we end the pregnancy," Demon said flatly. "No." Alara's voice was sharp despite her weakness. "Absolutely not. Alara, this child is our chance, Damon. You said it yourself, an heir, conceived in a true bond, carried by a marked Luna. This has never happened before in your line. We don't know what it means, what possibilities it opens." She gripped his hand back just as tightly. "We don't sacrifice them out of fear. Even if carrying them kills you, even then." Through the bond, she let him feel her certainty, her fierce maternal instinct that had emerged alongside her pregnancy. "I won't choose my life over theirs. That's not who I am." Through the bond, she felt his agony, the impossible choice between the woman he loved and the child they had created together. He looked to Morgana desperately. There must be something, a way to save them both. "There is," Morgana said quietly. "But you will not like it. Tell me. Step down. Relinquish the crown, the power, everything that ties you to the curse. Do it now, before the child is born, and sever the connection that feeds the curse's strength." Morgana's ancient eyes held infinite compassion. "Make the choice 7 generations of kings refuse to make. Choose love over power while you still can." Demon stood frozen, centuries of loyalty to his pack warring with his love for Alara. Through the bond, she felt every thought racing through his mind, the duty he owed his people, the consequences of leaving them leaderless, the fear that even sacrifice might not be enough. "The child will be your heir regardless," Elder Thorn said, having appeared with the other pack elders. "Born of your line, carrying your blood, we can hold the kingdom in trust until they come of age. And in the meantime," Demon's voice was hollow, "in the 20 years it takes for the child to grow, what happens to Shadowmere? We adapt, we survive, we prove that Shadowmere is strong enough to weather any challenge." Thorn moved closer. "My king, I have served your family for generations. I watched your father destroy himself with grief after your mother died. I watched you build walls around your heart to avoid the same fate. But this is your chance to break the cycle, to choose differently. If I step down and it doesn't work," Demon said slowly, "if Alara dies anyway, then I have sacrificed both my mate and my kingdom for nothing. Then you will have proven that loving her mattered more than ruling," Alara said softly. Through the bond, she sent him every ounce of love she felt, every moment of joy he had given her since tearing down his walls. "Damon, whatever happens, I need you to know this was worth it. Every moment, every risk, every heartbreak. You gave me more in these months than most people receive in a lifetime." "That's not enough," his voice broke. "I need decades with you, centuries. I need to watch our child grow up with both parents. I need—" He couldn't finish, his composure finally shattering. Alara pulled him down beside her on the bed, holding him while he trembled with suppressed grief. The mighty Lycan King, reduced to desperate fear by love. It should have seemed like weakness. Instead, it was the strongest thing she had ever witnessed. "Make the choice," she whispered. "Not because you're certain it will work, but because it's the right thing to do, because it says that people matter more than power, that love is worth any sacrifice." Through the bond, she felt the moment his decision crystallized. "Summon the pack," he said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "All of them. I want every member of Shadowmere present for this." The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Alara was helped into formal robes despite her protests that she was fine. The great hall was prepared, torches lit, the ancient throne at the center, cleaned and polished. The pack gathered, confusion rippling through them at the sudden summons. Demons stood before them in full regalia, every inch the powerful king they had followed for 3 centuries. Alara stood beside him, one hand on her swollen belly, the other clasped in his. "I have called you here to make an announcement that will change Shadowmere forever." Demon's voice carried through the hall, strong and certain. "For 7 generations the Nightshade line has been cursed. Every Luna has died young, every king has ruled alone, and the cycle has continued unbroken. Today, I break that cycle." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Through the bond, Alara felt Damon's resolve hardening into unshakable certainty. "I am stepping down as Lycan King of Shadowmere, effective immediately. Elder Thorn and the council will serve as regents until my child comes of age to claim the crown that is their birthright." He paused, his silver gaze sweeping the assembled pack. "I make this choice not out of weakness, but out of love. Love for my mate who carries our child while a curse seeks to claim her life. Love for my pack, who deserves a leader capable of putting their well-being ahead of personal power. And love for the child who will inherit a kingdom freed from the curse that has plagued us for too long." "My king," someone started to protest. "I am no longer your king," Demon interrupted gently. "I am simply Damon Nightshade, mate to Alara, father to our unborn child, and devoted member of this pack. The power I wielded, the dominance I claimed, the crown I wore, I relinquish it all." He removed the Nightshade crown from his head and placed it on the throne. Then, in a gesture that made Alara's breath catch, he knelt before the pack, the ultimate submission for an alpha, the complete surrender of dominance. The hall was silent, every eye fixed on the scene before them. Through the bond, Alara felt power shifting, the ancient curse recognizing what was happening, the sacrifice being made. "So witnessed," Elder Thorn said, his voice rough with emotion. "Damon Nightshade has relinquished his crown and his power. May the curse that has bound his line recognize this choice and release its hold." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Alara gasped, doubling over as pain lanced through her body. But it wasn't the pain of the curse. It was something else. Something that felt almost like breaking chains, like ancient magic being torn apart and rewritten. Through the bond, she felt it too, the dark shadow that had hovered over them since the marking, the presence of the curse, suddenly shattering, like glass breaking, like ice melting, like dawn ending the longest night. "It's working," Morgana breathed, moving to Alara's side. "The curse, it's breaking." Demon was there instantly, supporting Alara as her body convulsed with the force of magic unwinding. She felt the child inside her, strong and vital, no longer draining her life force. Felt the bond between her and Damon, pure and clear without the curse's poison threaded through it. "Breathe," Damon murmured against her ear. "Just breathe through it." The pain faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Alara gasping but whole. She looked up at Damon, no longer a king, just a man who had sacrificed everything for her, and felt tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. "You broke it." "We broke it," he corrected, pulling her close. "Together." The pack erupted into chaos around them, voices rising in shock and wonder. 7 generations of curse ended in a single moment by a king who chose love over power. Elder Thorn restored order with effort, but even he seemed shaken. "The kingdom will need time to adapt," he said to Damon, "but we will manage. And when your child is ready, they will inherit a kingdom freed from the shadow that has plagued it for too long." "Thank you," Demon said simply. Then, to Alara, "How do you feel?" "Strong." And she did. The exhaustion that had been building for weeks was gone. replaced by vitality she hadn't felt since before the pregnancy began. The curse really is broken. Then we have time, Demon said, something like wonder in his voice. Actual time. Years. Decades. However long fate grants us. A lifetime, Alara agreed, placing her hand over his where it rested on her belly. To raise our child. To be together. To finally live without fear hanging over us. Through the bond, she felt his joy, pure and unrestrained. No more walls, no more curse, just the two of them facing whatever future they could build together. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected. Alara had imagined becoming Luna, standing beside a king in a position of power. Instead, she stood beside a man who had given up everything for love. And somehow, that was infinitely better. 2 months later, Alara gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, both healthy and strong, with their father's silver eyes and their mother's fierce spirit. The boy they named Theron, the girl Lyanna. The pack celebrated for 3 days straight, joy and relief mixing with wonder at the miracle they had witnessed. Damon proved to be a devoted father, barely letting the twins out of his sight those first few weeks. Without a kingdom to rule, he threw himself into family life with the same intensity he had once devoted to political strategy. Alara watched him learn to change diapers and soothe crying infants with quiet amusement. "You're domesticating the beast of Shadowmere," she teased one evening, as he rocked Lyanna to sleep. "The beast was lonely," Damon replied, completely serious. "This is better." The pack adapted to rule by council surprisingly well. Elderthorn proved to be a capable regent, and the other kingdoms, after initial attempts to exploit Shadowmere's transition, discovered that a pack united in protecting their former king's family was perhaps even more formidable than one ruled by a single alpha. Aldrich Ravencroft sent a final raven, this one surprisingly gracious in defeat. "You found what my family has sought for generations," the letter read. "A way to choose love without losing everything. Perhaps there is hope for cursed bloodlines after all." 5 years after the curse broke, on a spring morning bright with promise, Alara stood on the fortress walls watching her children play in the courtyard below. Theron was already showing signs of alpha dominance, organizing the other pack children into elaborate games. Lyanna was quieter but no less strong, her will iron beneath her gentle demeanor. Damon joined her, sliding an arm around her waist in a gesture so casual and affectionate it still sometimes caught her off guard. 5 years of marriage without walls, without distance, and she still marveled at his transformation from cold king to devoted partner. "They'll be ready to take the crown when the time comes," he said, watching their children. Both of them co-rulers, perhaps. Shadowmere could do worse. "They have time to decide," Alara said. "Years to grow, to learn, to become whatever they're meant to be. Thanks to you." Demon turned her to face him, his silver eyes soft with love that no longer frightened him to feel. "You taught me that love was worth any sacrifice, that people mattered more than power." "You taught me that I was worth loving," Alara countered. That being chosen was about more than producing heirs or fulfilling roles. Below, Theron had apparently decided he was a Lycan warrior and was dramatically fighting invisible enemies, while Lyanna watched with fond exasperation. Their parents' love story would become legend. The Luna, who was rejected and reclaimed, the king who gave up his crown for love, the curse that was broken by sacrifice. But for now, in this moment, they were simply a family. No curses, no kingdoms, no destiny weighing on them. Just love, freely given and fully returned. "Do you ever regret it?" Alara asked quietly. "Giving up the crown?" Demon's answer was immediate and certain. "Not for a single moment. Power is empty without purpose. You gave me purpose. Our children gave me purpose. This life, messy and complicated and wonderfully mundane, is worth more than any throne." He kissed her then, gentle and deep, and through the bond she felt his absolute certainty. No walls, no barriers, just pure love flowing between them. 7 generations of Nightshade kings had chosen power over love and paid the price. Damon had chosen differently, and in doing so, had freed not just himself but his entire line from the curse that had bound them. The children called for their parents, and together Damon and Alara descended from the walls to join them. No crowns, no thrones, no darkness waiting to claim them. Just a family, building a future one day at a time, proving that love real, sacrificial, transformative love was the greatest power of all. The END.